Little excitement in front of your house this morning, huh?
Did see it, Craig?
Little excitement in front of your house this morning. huh?
Yeah, yeah.
I was,
Yeah,
what
Deb
happened?
said it was
Was she bad?
bad, yeah. She said there was like stuff all over, they had to clean the
Fell,
street up.
fell off her bike, was prostrate on the driveway, she was, on the street, she was knocked out.
Yeah, it's amazing, yeah. So she must have had an incident, you know, an episode of something
Something.
that made her go
Yeah.
down like a rock. Too bad.
How you doing, Zach? Hey, Zach. You don't have too many more of these left?
You canceled a few for me, that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
Testing.
Just,
We got none, that's all we need. Okay, we have none, that's all we need. What else is coming? Oh, Rich is out there.
Yeah, I just wanted you to know your mic was on.
Okay, all right.
Hi, Zach, how are you? So as soon as we hit 6:30, we can.
Yep, yep. So who's the other guy out there, Craig? Who's the other guy out there?
That's the project attorney.
Attorney, okay.
Oh, yeah.
What are they gonna do?
What's that?
Are we talking about game plan? Are we gonna change anything?
They were changing something about the deck, but I don't think it's gonna change anything. They're gonna change something. All right, everybody.
The August meeting of the Cape May City Planning Board is now in session and in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Notice this meeting has been given. If anybody has reason to believe this meeting is being held in violation of that act, they shall so state at this time. Hearing none, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Karen, roll call.
Mr. Bezier?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Riggs?
Here.
Mr. Crowley? Here. Mr. Gorgone? Mayor Mullick?
Here.
Councilmember Yeager?
Here.
Mrs. Reed?
Here.
Mr. Lundholm?
Here.
Mr. Paducis?
Here.
Mr. Crippen?
Okay, and we have a new member on the board, everybody, Justin Riggs, and you're going to be compelled to take an oath.
Okay. Can we vote on that before? Okay. I'm not going to torture you, make you read line after line. I'm going to read it, and then you're going to say you do, okay?
Got it.
All right. I, Justin Riggs, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the state of New Jersey, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same and to the governments established in the United States and in this state, under the authority of the people, and that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all the duties of the office of Planning Board member according to the best of my ability, and that I will not use my office to grant preferential treatment, nor to seek personal gain, favor, or advantage not available to the general public, so help me God. You so agree?
I do.
Okay. Has he signed one of these, or is this the one that he signed?
I was waiting for him to sign it in your presence.
In my presence?
Yes.
Honor for you to sign in my presence. Oh, man. I got to- Okay, congrats. Thank you, sir.
Okay, we have the resolution to approve 615 Lafayette Street LLC, Block 1060, Lot 5.01. Anybody have any amendments to that, or care to make a motion?
I'll move that.
Thank you, Dennis.
Second.
So we have a motion by Mr. Crowley. Sorry, did Mr. Paducis second? I'm sorry, who seconded? Oh, Mr. Lundholm. So motion by Mr. Crowley, seconded by Mr. Lundholm. Mayor Mullick?
I was absent. Should I abstain? I'll abstain.
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mrs. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Crowley?
Yes.
Mr. Lundholm?
Yes.
Mr. Riggs?
I was not a member yet, so I'm going to abstain.
Mr. Paducis?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Bezier?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we have minutes of the July 9th meeting for approval. Hearing no corrections, we'll get a motion to approve those.
I'll move that.
Second.
Mr. Crowley motions, Mrs. Reed seconds. Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mrs. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Crowley?
Yes.
Mr. Lundholm?
Yes.
Mr. Riggs?
Abstain.
Mr. Paducis?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Bezier?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, we've had an application tonight, Jason and Cinda Cleaway, I guess that's how you say it. 501 Hugh Street, Block 1049, Lot 10.01, site plan, preliminary and final, and variance relief. So,
John Amenhauser, the DeWeese Law Firm,
yours on.
here on behalf of the applicants, Jason and Cinda Clewy. Subject property is 501 Hughes Street here in Cape May. It's Block 1049, lots 10 and 10.01. Property is located in the residential seasonal zoning district. Prior to appearing this evening, the applicant received approvals from the City of Cape May Historic Preservation Commission on May 28th of this year. The Shade Tree Commission, Public Works, Police, and Fire have also advised of their approval of the proposed application. The only recommendation for denial that was received was from the city's Environmental Commission. And before we get into our presentation this evening, I do have an exhibit to provide to the board. We have full-size copies as well as letter size. But we have revised the plans slightly in order to effectuate the concerns of the Environmental Commission and alleviate those through a couple of reductions in terms of shade tree coverage that Mr. Bechtold will advise of during his testimony. As is set forth in the application that was provided, what we're proposing to do through this application is to construct an 18-foot by 25-foot in-ground swimming pool with paver patio surround in the rear yard, even though it's a technical route, I'll call it, it's a front yard, but we view it as a traditional rear yard of the subject property. What we are needing is a single variance that's highlighted in Mr. Hurlis's review letter related to the connection between the paver patio and the pool area, which I think we'll get into shortly. With me this evening, here to provide professional testimony, is Mr. Andrew Bechtold. Andrew is a registered architect with a firm in which it's Thomas Bechtold Architecture and Engineering. Andrew, I'm not sure if you've been here before or not, but happy to elicit credentials, Mr. Becerra, if you'd like to hear them.
I'm just going to swear him in before he does.
Okay.
Sorry, and we're also going to swear in the board engineer. Do each of you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Throw a few credentials at us.
Yes, been a registered architect since 2012. I've been before boards in Wildwood, Sea Isle, Avalon, Ocean City, Longport, Margate. I'm registered in the state of New Jersey. I'm also a professional planner in the state of New Jersey. I'm also registered in Florida, Georgia, and Maryland.
Good, Craig. Mike, you good with that? Okay.
You have to be good with that.
Is that enough to?
Anybody have any questions? Mr. Bechtold, no? Okay. Fire away.
Thank you. Before Mr. Bechtold begins, can we provide you with what I'd like to have marked as Exhibit A1? Rich? This is the revised plan that we put together just to review. This, like I said, addresses the concerns of the Environmental Commission. Yeah, we can hand those ones out. Yeah, we'll do that one.
Just more paper.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Here, I'll pass it.
Mr. King, I guess it would make sense, too, I know we just had this discussion, before we begin presenting, I think there is a question related to whether or not a variance is actually required for what's being proposed here. There was one variance, like I mentioned, highlighted in Mr. Hurlis's review letter. And looking at the terms of that section of the ordinance, I think when you take it in a literal sense, there's an argument to be made that that variance isn't required. I'm just wondering if you want to, we can discuss that with the board now to make that determination. It's no
What did you
impact.
change from the plan you submitted to address this?
So what you'll see in the plan that was submitted to you is that between the paver patio area, which if you're looking at the plan would be on the left side of the pool, there is actually, and Andrew, you can show, there's a strip of grass between the pool and the paver patio area that removes any formal connection between the two.
Is there a fence there?
I'm sorry?
Is there a fence between them?
No, sir.
It's not.
All right, I'll be glad to let the board vote on that. I'd like to have Mr. Hurlis speak on it as well. I'll just share my personal opinion, but my opinion doesn't matter, it's your interpretation. I don't view the connection as being necessarily a physical connection. I view it as being in connection with, in the sense that it's a patio next to a pool intended to help, for people who are in the pool to get out of the pool and play near the pool and scream and yell at things people do near pools. I just view that as being as connected to the pool, not so much a physical thing. If everyone could avoid that provision by simply putting a 1-foot strip between there, we might as well delete the ordinance. So the literal meaning is one thing, but the purpose and intent of it is the primary object. So in my view, I think it's still connected with the pool. But if the board feels differently, that's their view, and I will not stand in their way. Mr. Hurlis, if he feels differently, he can say so. And
Yeah, I think it's important just to read the language of the code term of the section that we're dealing with that involves the variance, because it requires the board to interpret what connected means, okay? So the section that's in question is 525-62A1, which says, all swimming pools, including any aprons, walkways, or patios connected with any swimming pool, semicolon, A, shall be set back at least 10 feet from the property line. They've done that. B, may not be within the required front yard setback area, they've met that, and C, shall be set back from the front property line by a distance greater than the actual front yard setback of the principal structure to which the swimming pool is accessory. So the plan that I reviewed didn't meet that along the Decatur Street side. This is a corner lot, so it has two front yards. What they're presenting to you tonight is they've disconnected that patio physically from the pool. So Mr. King gave you what he believes the intent is. When this ordinance was crafted, I believe that that was the intent, was to make sure that these patios that are connected to the pool are often the places of the busiest part of the pool. There's noise generated from that. And I believe the intent of the ordinance was to require setbacks from those patios along the front, rear, and side lines to protect the neighbors and the streetscape from those. So I think what you need to do is, whether connected means physically or whether it's like related to the pool. And I think that's your opinion, Mr. King?
The only thing I would go with is, I think a couple times you said connected to the pool, but the ordinance says connected with the pool. And I'm not saying it would change my opinion if it said connected to, but it does say connected with instead of connected to. But the gist of it is, people play around pools, and we need not just the pool, but the areas where they utilize the pool to be a certain distance away, and I think that's what it meant. But if the other folks have an opinion that maybe that is too constricting on smaller yards, and it really means connected to, that's up to them, and I just have an opinion, I'm not the judge, so.
Well, we don't make the interpretation. That's the zoning board's call, isn't it?
Actually, I believe you can interpret the ordinance. Is that what we should do first, Mr. King?
You can do an informal interpretation of your own ordinance. Technically, interpretations are for the zoning board, but in a lot of situations, the planning board is also called upon to decide their understanding of their own ordinance, and it's appropriate for you to do so. There's a case that says that, the name of which I don't recall, but I promise it's out there. So I'm inviting you to decide if you believe that the strip between the pool and the patio near it means that part of the ordinance doesn't apply.
Can we say in this specific application, we feel that it's part of the pool, instead of making that broad determination?
You can say, well, yeah, you can look at that plan and decide if you believe the ordinance should still apply to that plan as revised. That's the question. If you say yes, then they need a variance. If you say no, you don't. So the question is, based on this plan, do you believe they need a variance? That way, you're just focused on this plan. Is that okay?
Bill, I just have a quick question. Can you show me what the difference is again?
The patio that's here,
Right.
actually on both sides of the pool, so this would be on the west side and the south side. They're separated from the pool coping by approximately 6 inches or so with the actual patio. So it's coping, grass, and then patio. The area in question happens.
With the arrows already.
No, I understand.
So the area
I'm
in
with you.
question happens to be this westerly piece, which is closest to Cedar Avenue.
Right, got it.
That is the issue.
So I have a question too. So if you're on the patio.
Excuse me, can everyone pick up a mic? 'Cause we
I'm
can't
on.
hear.
I'm on.
Rick, okay, thank you.
This is the patio.
Yes, sir.
So if you're on that patio and you want to go in the pool, you get up and walk straight into the pool?
Yes, sir.
So, and this grass strip you're putting in there now is how wide?
About 6 inches, sir.
6 inches? And you think that makes a difference? That
It was a
resolves the
question that the
connected
lawyer
issue?
and everybody were discussing, is whether it's connected, physically connected, or in association with. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, could we see the diagram on this side if you could move it? So when you're presenting, we can all see it. Well, now they can't see it, so maybe.
No, I understand it. We're good over here with it.
Right here.
Here's this, that little signature strip.
He's got it, he's got it, he's got it, he's got it.
This, where these arrows are, that represents
Here you're showing
So this is coping,
7 carports,
patio.
and now it's down to 2.
So we obviously are willing and want to proceed regardless of whether you believe a variance is required or not, but it's going to change how I'm presenting the application, whether there is or isn't variance needed. Okay, that's the only
I
reason
just,
it's
I just
come
want to
up.
point out to the board that regardless of whether you think there's a variance necessary or not, it's still, you retain jurisdiction because there's a site plan, a site plan approval for permitted use. Okay? So it doesn't matter whether you find it needs a variance or doesn't need a variance. I just want to point that out.
So what sort of a motion do you need?
That a variance is required for the patio area being in the set, actually, not in the setback, in the,
Not being aligned with,
not being aligned with the front of the structure.
It's supposed to be behind the front face of the structure along Decatur Street, and it does not meet that requirement. It meets all the other setback requirements of pools.
So the motion would be that,
Make a motion that it does need a variance, and then when they vote yes, it means it needs a variance. If you vote no, it doesn't need a variance.
yeah, I think it needs a variance. I believe,
Make a
it-
motion that it needs a variance.
I make that motion, I believe it's connected to the pool.
Get a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Crowley motions, Mrs. Reed seconds. Mayor Malik?
Any questions on the motion?
Oh, yeah, any questions?
Okay, I'll take a roll call.
Thank you. Mr. Crowley motions, Mrs. Reed seconds. Mayor Malik?
Yes.
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mrs. Reed?
Yes.
Mr. Crowley?
Yes?
Mr. Lundholm?
No.
Mr. Riggs?
Yes.
Mr. Produces?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Bezerra?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can
Good to proceed. Thank you. So, Mr. Bechtold, if you can you provide the board with an overview of this property and its current use and what we're looking to do here?
yes, the current property's use remains as it is. Currently, in the north part of the property, there is a gazebo with plantings and kind of a meandering garden around that. We plan to take that out and place in a pool, again, with plantings around it as per your ordinance, and then add 2 hardscape spaces, one directly to the south and one directly to the west. Our reasoning for this was simple. The setbacks need to be required from the residential, which is immediately to the east, and then the commercial, which is immediately to the north. We're complying with all those setbacks. It's just the technicality of the patio being in the space between Decatur and the pool. Again, the house setback here is only required to be 10 feet. However, the existing structure that's there is technically 22.4 feet. The pool is in total compliance with that. It's strictly the patio, which again is a hardscape at grade. And again, we're on a corner lot, so this is kind of a unique situation where this patio space is going to be closer to the street, which I believe in this location makes a lot of sense considering the commercial that's directly behind this and the amount of foot traffic and other pedestrians that are coming down Decatur. We'd rather have any kind of exterior activity happening there away from the residential neighbors immediately to the east and more lively area of the street onto the west side. That's why we chose to put the patio in this location.
So, and I think you just mentioned it, but in terms of the setback of the pool itself, would you agree that the building, I guess the face of the building setback along Decatur, it's 22.4 feet, correct?
Correct.
22 feet 4 inches.
So at 22.4, so 22 foot 5 inches, and we're further than that to the pool. Again, it's the patio space. And my argument there is, if the patio didn't exist and that was grass, I can still congregate on that space. And wouldn't you want the louder space to be towards the street side anyway in this particular application, where again, we are abutting a commercial use directly next door. Again, we're further away from any residential neighbor to the east, so if you're going to have any place to congregate around said pool, you'd want to have it closer to the street where there's more activity, more noise in this particular situation.
Now, Andrew, just so it's clear, if the paver patio area that is proposed along Decatur were not there, and it was grass, as you just mentioned, would there be a need for any variance relief right now?
There would be no need for variance relief.
Okay.
It should also be noted, though, that, again, we are under an impervious coverage substantially. We're still, as you can see in the report from the engineer, we're significantly under in the impervious coverage. We're allowed to be 75%, and even with this addition of the pool, because of the hardscape and the gazebo that was there, we're only increasing the hardscape by approximately 4.4%, which is 57.2%, significantly under the impervious. So from an issue of runoff, we don't see any issue whatsoever. It's also fortunate that the back north corner, I would say the northeast corner of the property, which abuts the commercial neighbor and the residential neighbor, that's actually the high point. So all water, everything flows from that back corner towards the street, towards Decatur. So again, I don't see any issue as far as runoff is concerned here. We've added some additional grading on the exhibits too for the engineer as well. We're also not proposing any kind of recharge system on the site again because we're so significantly under for the impervious coverage on the lot.
Andrew, can you also briefly just touch on any proposed lighting, whether you think there's any?
Again, we are not proposing any lighting. We don't want to have any nuisance lighting for the neighbors. The only lighting that will be the lighting that's in the pool itself. And that will, that'll be in the pool. Will not be casting any other light towards anybody else. There'll be reflected light, I guess, inside the pool, but no other light is proposed around the area around the pool at all.
And given the relatively straightforward nature, the site plan aspect of this application, is it your opinion that both preliminary and final can be and should be granted at the same time this evening?
Absolutely. Again, we're not planning on changing anything with the use of the existing structure. We're simply taking an area that was used as a gazebo and other walking area into a pool space.
Now, I know you've touched on a couple of comments, but you had the chance to review Mr. Hurlis's review memo prior to tonight's presentation.
Yes.
So you just touched on 3 of the comments he had on page 2, but he also indicates, as we've asked for, a waiver from an environmental impact statement and from a traffic impact report. Can you just touch on why you believe, in your professional opinion, those waivers would be justified here?
Well, again, we're not changing the use. The number of rooms isn't changing. The number of parking spaces isn't changing. We're not proposing to add any extra curb cuts or anything like that. Again, I don't see how traffic, and he agrees that a waiver could be granted here fairly easily. Again, nothing's changing there. It's not a water park, it's a pool. And then secondly, as far as an environmental impact statement, again, it's a very minor increase in impervious coverage. One could even argue that there's going to be more water saved inside the pool. Some municipalities consider a pool as pervious. If that was the case, we'd actually have a negative amount of, we'd have a decrease in impervious coverage, not an increase. So again, I don't see much runoff. We are working with the environmental people to make sure that the plantings are appropriate as far as distances, species, and sizes. Again, we believe that we've kind of got that under control, and now they're happy with what we're going to have.
So just to touch on that a bit, as I'd mentioned at the outset, we received the recommendation for approval from every local city commission except for the environmental commission, and they had some concerns regarding the amount of trees and growing close to each other as they mature. Can you talk about what you changed on the revised plan that was handed out tonight to alleviate that concern? Or respond to
Yes, actually, they wanted us to remove more trees and bushes because it was too densely packed. They wanted it a little bit more spaced out so the hollies specifically had more room to grow together. They also wanted to change out some of the trees. So the 2 trees on the property will now be these red bud trees, and then the American hollies will be kind of around the rest of it. And then along the easterly property line, we're going to have the English laurel along the easterly property line. And again, our landscape designer from our firm has reached out to both the client and to the environmental to make sure that they're happy with what we're doing. Again, if we're lucky enough to have your approval tonight, we'll make sure those updated drawings get to the proper people.
And the proposed landscaping along the edges of the property around the outside, those will be tall enough to provide a natural buffer in terms of being able, from a privacy standpoint?
Absolutely. That was kind of the goal, and again, that's what the Environmental Commission wanted us to make sure that we weren't, tugging out the rest, cutting off the natural resources for the other plants, and so that's why we actually cut down the amount of them so that they could grow into their mature natural height.
Okay. And then just in regard to the general review comments provided in the board engineer's review letter, would we be okay with adhering to those as conditions of approval tonight?
Absolutely. The only other comment was, I know there's some discussion about the curb and sidewalk being replaced. This is going to be a gunite pool. I don't think they're going to have many heavy cranes. I don't know if that should be if it's damaged or if you want to see that entire area actually replaced in its entirety along this location.
It's a standard condition that we evaluate after construction, especially when those pool contractors drive over top of those sidewalks and break them apart. So before we issue a CO, we evaluate, make sure that there's any trip hazards are fixed, Any broken panels of sidewalk are fixed. We're not asking for the total replacement of the sidewalk along the front.
But you'd like to see that all bonded, is that correct, or no?
Typically, no. We'll
Okay.
just make it a condition of approval, so that'll hold up the certificate of occupancy before it's issued.
Thank you very much.
Anything else you'd like to add, Andrew, related to the application or our request for site plan and variance approval?
Nothing.
Talk about fencing for a second.
I'm sorry?
Talk about fencing, where the fences are.
Sure. Do you want to go over that?
So the fencing's actually along the perimeter of the site. It'll be along the easterly property line, the northerly property line, and then it's set in ever so slightly on the easterly property line, the front property line. Now, there is a modification. According to the Historic Board, they would like to see us have a 6-foot-high fence.
Right.
We have on our plan a 4-foot-high fence. They want to see it as a 6-foot-high fence. So we would like to make that modification to a 6-foot-high fence around this area.
Is the 6-foot-high fence proposed in the front yard?
Yes.
They allowed it, they say around it, but we're more than happy to comply whatever the board would like
So
to
there's
see.
another variance that's required if you're going to propose a 6-foot-high fence in the front yard.
And again, we're more than happy to keep it at a 4, however, in their
Right.
statement,
I
they
think
said they
you'd
want
prefer
to.
that.
And we still note 4 here, so again, if,
I don't have a problem with it, it just technically triggers a variance.
Understood. Understood.
Can I just ask, that 4-foot-high fence is on Decatur?
yes, Decatur's, we actually labeled it on Decatur. We can and we have actually a 4-foot on Decatur, we have a 4-foot on the northerly property line, a 4-foot 6 fence along the easterly property line, and then we were going to do a 4-foot property line between the property and the pool itself, the main guest house. Again, Historic Board said that we can go with a 6-foot fence, but we have on our exhibit that a 4-foot fence is here. We're more than happy to.
HPC wanted a 6-foot fence along Decatur?
They said it's very vague. It basically says that they wanted a 6-foot fence around the pool,
What agency are you talking about?
the historic.
The HPC's approval.
HPC said the applicant intends to erect a new 6-foot wooden fence with self-latching gate around the pool area.
Right.
As required by the City of Cape May Municipal Code. I had a question about that. What part of the code requires that fence to be 6 feet, and does it require that latch?
The latching is
It has to
required.
meet the safety, the building code.
So they're referring to the latch system, not the height
But
of the
there's
fence.
no requirement for 6-foot-high fence as part of the safety provisions of that section.
Correct. And again, we don't note it on our site plan as 6 foot, but I did want to bring that to the board's attention. I just want to make sure that the board, we can go from 4 to 6, whatever they prefer. The only area that we noted at 4'6" was along the easterly property line, and that's it.
It appears as though the HPC may have made a mistake here. Would it be appropriate, since this property is in the heart of the historic district, that we refer this back to HPC to clarify their thinking?
There's an old, nice wrought
There's,
iron.
along the outside.
It seems like an important decision to me.
Yeah.
What landscaping is along that fence? I thought somebody told me there's a lot of,
There is a lot.
landscaping.
One more proposed.
Correct.
More proposed.
Not more proposed. What's there will be removed, and it will be replaced with the holly, American holly.
All the landscaping is on the inside of the fence. There's no buffering of it from the outside, if you're on the street.
So as you're strolling down historic Decatur Street, there will be either a 4-foot or a 6-foot fence right next to the sidewalk. Is that right?
Correct. We've called out for a 4-foot fence. Again,
Is it a new fence or is it the fence that's there?
it's a new fence. It's a new wooden picket fence.
Yeah, they currently have a wrought iron fence, which
That
is
is
like maybe 3 feet high.
Correct.
I just don't think the HPC was well focused on.
What they had indicated when we originally had proposed a taller fence that was wrought iron was that it didn't meet the historic standard. They wanted to see a wood fence because they thought it was more in line with the historic standards, which is why we went to a wood fence. It was at their recommendation that we went with that.
But this-
Not at our own, yeah, we weren't offering it.
It's the 6-foot part of it that's going to trigger a variance.
Right. I think that's the area of concern for the board is how that 6-foot-high fence that close to the sidewalk is going to impact the streetscape there.
As a former member of the HPC, I never heard them recommend a 6-foot-high wood fence on the sidewalk. So I have to assume that that was not what they meant.
I actually have the application if anyone wants to see it. I have a copy. It says 6-foot wooden fence to surround swimming pool area.
Surround the pool. That's
Just
what
a
I-
pool area.
I think
This is a copy of the actual,
You have it, it's in your packet.
My concern is the 4-foot-high fence along Decatur Street opens up that pool and the activity to the environment on the street, which is quiet and vintage and people walk, restaurants. I'm not sure I can visualize activity at a pool right there.
And-
6-foot might have been suggested for privacy.
Maybe.
I'm looking back now, this is from May of this year, we were before the HPC quite a while back. What the requirement is that's indicated in the application, what was required by the board, was immediately surrounding the swimming pool itself.
Yeah,
So this was for purposes of safety around the swimming pool, to have a self-latching gate to access that pool, but not from the complete outside of the property and surrounding
Yeah.
it, is within it.
that's surrounding the pool. I
Yes.
think they're about a safety fence around the pool. I just don't think they were focused on what's along Decatur and putting a 6-foot fence
They
along
didn't-
Decatur. I just,
You're correct.
tearing down a wrought iron railing, I'd have to hear that from actual HPC people to believe that.
Can I also comment there too? It boggles the imagination that anybody would recommend a 6-foot-high fence at the edge of the pool. That,
That doesn't
it
make,
just doesn't make any sense.
no, I agree with you.
Well, how could you get somebody out of the pool who's drowning unless you use the self-latching gate on the
Correct.
6-foot wooden fence?
I
Correct.
mean, the pool area. I mean,
No,
Not around the
that's not
pool.
what I just heard. This is around the pool.
what does it say?
This looks to me like it's around the pool.
Can you read it again? I thought it said pool area.
It does. It says a 6-foot wooden fence with a self-latching gate around the pool area.
Yeah, I mean, you can't just put it around the pool, you can't get out of the pool. So, I mean, I think generally, you have to have a
4-foot fence.
And again, we're proposing the
Well,
4-foot
you
fence
shouldn't
along
have
the
any
property.
fence at the pool edge, but. Again, my question, I guess, is not yet answered. Should you refer this whole thing back to HPC to ask them to clarify what they're talking about here?
I think we're looking at the entirety of the application here that Ms. Keenan had a copy of, and I think it makes it clear here in the cover letter to the board, right, this is to the HPC. What we had originally proposed that they had denied was wrought iron fencing around the pool area. What they wanted was it to be enclosed by a white wooden fence that would match the existing wooden fence along the northerly property line. That's what they said we want to see around that pool area. So we had agreed to that based on the recommendation to go against the installation of wrought iron and to use wood
But that would assume that the existing wrought iron fence would remain, is
on
that?
the outside of the lot.
Yeah,
Correct,
okay.
on the perimeter. That's correct.
That makes sense to me as a
Yes.
recommendation, okay.
I suppose it's possible that we could vote on the application and leave open a limited remand on the fence issue, because I'm worried this board is going to approve something that they didn't intend, and we're going to tear down an old wrought iron fence to put up a wood fence that no one really wanted us to do. So
Yeah.
I just think we're in kind of a mysterious area on this fence.
We'd be fine
You and
with
I had a cryptic conversation about it outside. I still don't understand what they want or what we're supposed to do, and I have to write this, and I don't want to write something that
Understood. We'd be fine with going back there for clarification on that
Just
issue.
on
It's a
that issue.
condition,
I
not
don't
an issue at all.
Send the whole thing back now.
Well, the only thing is, the HPC doesn't control the height. They control the style of the fence, and that's it.
Right.
So, and I think everybody here agrees that a 6-foot fence around is onerous.
Well, we'll send it back with a
We'll
note that says that the board, if this is what everybody wants, if they do get approved tonight, which I'm not saying they will, I have no opinion on that.
Understood.
I'm saying that if it is approved, there'll be a condition that to go back to the HPC to clarify the fence issue with the direction that the board doesn't want a 6-foot fence on Decatur and isn't sure about what style fence they really want on Decatur, right? Is that the gist?
Yeah, I also would like to have the HPC answer why they checked off fences and swimming pool, but did not check off deck, patio, accessory structures, additions,
Well, there's no additions.
It's not,
And they don't control
accessory
patios.
structures on the plan.
They don't control patios. They're dealing with structures.
I mean, all these things are on the plan, and HPC looks at fences and swimming pools, and they suggested a 6-foot fence. And it's a little bit
They also approved it.
Yeah, that's my question.
Correct. Yeah.
Why would they approve something with this kind of inconsistency in several different places?
Can I'm gonna digress a little bit.
Absolutely.
Going back to the lighting. So you're saying there would be no floodlighting on that at all at night?
None, none whatsoever.
Really, I don't have quite a handle on what business this is. Is this like running like a motel now, or
It's a guest house, so they're,
does that pool have hours of closure? Or is that pool available?
that pool is, it's available as they, but if there's hours of operation that you'd like to see put into play, we'd be happy to abide by them. But no, we're not proposing any set hours of operation. It would be much the same as any residential swimming pool.
Or that side patio, if they decided to do some kind of games at night, there would be no floodlighting coming on? Am I clear on that?
Correct, yes.
Mr. Armaza, did this actually go before the whole HPC board?
This was in review. I believe this was done in review. We've gone before I'm hearkening back, this was done in review, based on the application filed.
Yeah, so it was just done by the chairperson.
I didn't have to arrive.
Mr. Gillis says, the HPC has improved their process.
Mhm.
And Mr. Gillis has been doing a resolution, even for preliminary approval, we're actually getting a document that is conceptual approval, we're getting like a formal document. This looks like someone stamped that the application approved, and that's why,
Was this done before?
part of the reason why it's a little cryptic.
When did, again, this,
May 24th.
was Chris there then? I know he's somewhat
I
recent.
think that administratively approved. Was there an actual hearing? Wait, you're-
No, but it is a subcommittee. It's not just
Right.
one
Yeah,
person. There are three of them that meet every Tuesday morning and try to approve things that wouldn't need to go to the full commission.
Is Chris there?
Chris is not there,
That
no.
explains some of it.
Yeah, typically, we would file those requests to be reviewed in committee, and if they deem it to be large enough where we have to appear, then I would. In this case, they approved it based on our request to be reviewed in committee.
Okay, it just explains a little bit of the lack of, usually, we've been getting clearer stuff.
Okay, understood.
The clarity of some of the more recent stuff.
We have no objection to going back for clarity on that issue, none at all.
Can I ask a question? So, just so I'm clear, and I think I'm really just repeating what you said, Mr. Amenhauser, but the pool itself needs no variance. We are basically looking at a variance for the patio on the Decatur side of the street.
And the fact that it's being interpreted as connected is what triggers the need for a variance. If it weren't deemed to be connected, we meet the 10-foot setback that's required for patios on a frontage. There'd otherwise be triggered, no need for variance relief.
That didn't happen.
Correct, it didn't here. But, right, there are alternatives that would completely alleviate the need for a variance. We just don't see it as being beneficial.
Can I ask you a question on the design portion of it? You clearly put the 1-foot strip in there to create a physical buffer in that interpretation. Now that that interpretation has been ruled on.
Right.
Would you intend then to put the brick up to the pool?
If that was something you wanted to see, we could, but I
I'm
don't
just
think we'd
saying, it
otherwise.
seems like a silly thing if that were to be approved. The reason being was a physical detachment.
Is there a minimum of connection it has to be? I mean, what difference does it make if it's 3/4 of an inch or 6 inches or a foot?
Right, it doesn't.
I mean, to me, it's not connected anyway, because it's
What was
concrete
the-
from a
what was
pool
in
and
the
them
original
pavers.
app?
They're not the same thing.
Did we even change that?
I don't think it was abutting.
To be quite
It's more
honest
of an
with you,
interpretation.
Looks like it just abutted, right?
No, it's always been that way.
I don't think we actually, when we put this revised plan together, it was more to address the concerns of the environmental commission.
I understand.
I don't think that the location of that paver patio area in the pool has actually changed from plan to plan. It's just a matter of, it was picked up here, highlighted, and that's when I looked at it and thought, well, they're not connected, and that's what raised this issue, but we didn't actually change that.
The scale of this plan is much greater and allows
Yeah.
you to see better.
Right.
The previous plan was much smaller scale, so it looked like it was connected.
So we have to address the fencing now, right?
Well, and again, we're proposing 4 foot around basically everything except for the easterly property line, which is a 4 foot 6 inches.
So it wouldn't.
So can I ask a question to it? So the full HPC typically would or would not hear an application like this?
That's.
With
their
the
purview,
fence,
their
with the
determination.
fence.
So,
Yeah, they pick and choose whether they do require a full board or whether they do work session.
Because I do hear what Mr. Crowley's saying, and if we want to have a more clear direction on what the HPC wanted, then I would recommend that the full HPC would hear that. But that's just my,
And I'd have no problem with that either. Hearing whether it's the subcommittee or the full board is fine with me.
I'm trying to think about the logistics of this,
Right,
so that you don't keep getting bounced back and forth between us,
right.
between this board and
And
the
HPC.
commission.
Yep.
Because if they say that they are adamant about a 6-foot-high fence that encroaches into, then there's a variance necessary, and then,
Triggers it to come back here.
so does it make sense to take?
Craig, I think the board's direction to the HPC is, we're rejecting a 6-foot fence.
Right.
along
Okay.
Decatur. We're just rejecting that. So the HPC that's the limitation that we're giving.
Okay.
And it's the.
So though you want
heard that
to,
from-
so in other words.
No, you're correct.
So in other words, we're asking the applicant to conform with the fence requirements with regards to height that are contained in the ordinance. That means they're allowed to be 6 foot high in the rear and the side, but they have to dive down as soon as you get even with the rear of the structure.
Hence, no variance.
Hence, no variance.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure everyone's clear on that.
I would just clarify one thing. I think as we look more deeply into this application or approval, we need to talk to them about not just the fence, but the decks and the sheds and the patios. If their checklist says we're looking at this stuff, projects requiring the approval of the HPC include but are not limited to, maybe we should be.
Is there a shed?
We don't have
There's no shed.
There's an equipment shed, a pool shed somewhere, isn't there?
It's
Yeah,
the
right
pool
here.
equipment. It's just the pool equipment itself.
The filter.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's,
It's not a shed.
not-
It's freestanding pool equipment that's screened. Yeah.
all right.
Not a shed, not a structure.
It's,
Like lattice work or something?
Yes.
Correct.
all right, well, fine. Okay. In any event,
Well, to your point, I know HPC will review lattice around an HVAC piece of
yeah, they
equipment
would.
or
yeah,
whatever, I mean.
True.
If they got the application and chose to do it that way, that's their issue, right? I mean, they must have a set of standards, what goes before a subcommittee and what doesn't.
but I think we're trying to now figure out with clarity what their intent was. And I think the only way to figure out what the intent of the HPC is not to look at what a subcommittee, but what the full commission. I think that's the point that's being argued.
And I have, the applicant has zero objection to that. We will indicate in any correspondence to the HPC, that it's and your resolution will too, that it's the direction of the board that the full committee hear this, or see this,
And there'd not be a 6-foot
that
fence.
we will not put a 6 fence in the front, correct?
So is the 4-foot fence going to be the wood, or is it going to be, what is it, wrought iron, or what?
Wrought iron is not going to keep, I don't know if that works for a pool.
That's my question.
I had that.
I think they envision an internal.
They
This
did.
happens all the time. There's an
It's in it.
internal fencing system around the pool, because these are guest houses. I mean, they have to buy insurance and stuff. So they're
Right.
gonna need like a real fence around that pool with an appropriate lock, and then they're gonna have I personally think it's gonna be a really thick hedgerow with like.
Exactly. You're not gonna see it.
With a wrought iron gate like there's been there for, I don't know, decades, so that's,
Makes sense to me.
That's what the
That's what
application to
I-
the HPC proposed.
I don't think they focused on that. I think they just wanted to fence around. So we're gonna send it back for fencing.
So if we approve something like that, if we decide to approve it, then it's conditioned, and then that's going to go back to HPC for their approval.
With
The way we,
direction.
with our direction. This
As
is
it
what we
relates to
want.
the design of the fence.
Okay.
And to the full commission or to a subcommittee?
Do the
Full commission.
Okay.
Not, Rich, now you got me confused.
Are you confused?
Rich,
Yes, sir.
what you just said doesn't fit this plan unless I'm not reading it right. This says, right, abutting the sidewalk is a proposed wood fence matching 4 feet high. The fence is going to be on the sidewalk.
I understand that that says that, but I'm not, maybe the HPC says that they prefer a wood fence over a wrought iron fence. I don't know, but all I heard was a 6-foot fence. I don't know what their decision was.
So we gotta send it to them.
Yeah, but with limitation, they can't require a 6-foot fence on Decatur Street.
Right.
What we have with HPC is a stamp HPC approved on the bottom of the application Mr. Ammenhauser wrote.
Now, does that direction change how this board should proceed, though? With any limitation, or with the recommendation
Consider
back?
other aspects of this application.
You can still vote on the variance.
Yeah.
Everything. I mean, I don't think it's like a full remand back to that.
Right.
It's a- The things that are, the variance part of it, I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
We will do, a lot of times we'll do conditional approvals that mandate that the HPC or Environmental Commission have to review it.
And here we're giving them specific
Right.
direction.
Just for my 2 cents, since this application was approved, they have changed their application to say, if you need board approval, check this box. So that could have made a difference if they had known this project was coming to the board for approval.
Thank you, that may explain it.
Have you finished with your presentation?
Any further, Andrew?
No?
Yeah, I believe we are.
I had a question, if you don't mind. You're asking for a hardship variance? Under the terms of 40:55D?
So we should touch on that a little bit. I think it's an easier ask, Andrew. In terms of the variance needed related to the pool and the patio area that are connected, is it your professional opinion that granting that kind of relief would advance certain purposes of zoning?
Sure. This is an amenity that's outdoors. The amenity that was outdoors before here was a gazebo that had substantial hardscape around it as well, albeit it was in the very rear yard of it, but it did have paths and sidewalks that led to it. So in theory, those sidewalks that were part of the gazebo were even actually worse than what we were. The sidewalks that were part of the gazebo, if you look on page PB1, were probably 5 feet off of the property. So in theory, the accessory structure that we're proposing is actually better than what was already there. Now, the existing structure's front yard setback is supposed to be 22.4 feet, but the existing accessory structure, again, with paths where people could walk at any hour of the night, have conversations, have a cell phone conversation, play tag, little kids running around in that back area, was still there. This patio that we're proposing now will have a more private fence in some regard, have more private landscaping around it, again, in some regard, and again, we'll have a fully compliant pool as far as setbacks are concerned. We believe that it's a benefit for the building, it's a benefit for the guests that are there. This is in an area that is slightly commercial, especially with commercial behind it, so there is a sense of noise and pedestrian activity. So that, we believe that's part of kind of keeping that activity alive in that area.
And that patio area you've testified to earlier is at ground level, is it grade, correct?
It is absolutely a grade. It's not like this is an elevated deck that people are jumping around on. It's not a garage top deck or something like that. This is down at grade, and it's a relatively modest patio. It's about 12 foot by 18 feet. It's a very small space. I mean, you're going to put a few lounge chairs out there for people to enjoy the pool, and possibly, just sit and watch their kids play in it.
So this statute on dealing with hardships,
I can tell you, we're not asking for this under the hardship criteria. It's listed there.
you're not.
Substantial benefit under the C2 is the more appropriate avenue, I
Okay.
think, for this
Now, what's the
request.
substantial benefit again?
So Andrew, do you believe that I know you just went over some of the purposes that you think are advanced, to put it in terms of what's listed in the municipal land use law. Do you see any intrusion on light air and open space if this were to be approved?
This is less in height than the existing gazebo that's there. This is basically a hole in the yard. So as far as a visual environment impact, I don't see that as being an issue. Again, it will be fully landscaped as per the requirements of the environmental, which will also give it some screening as well. It will allow another amenity for more people to come to Cape May and enjoy the beauty of downtown and the historic area. It's an amenity for young families to come down and be there. You're a little bit of a far walk from the beach. This will allow that access to it. It'll also be safer for kids than being in some of the ocean during a riptide. It'll be better for people who just want to walk around and get some exercise in that as well. It's an amenity that allows people to want to come here more because you're providing another activity that they can do that's close to this boarding house.
So
Yeah, it's a block from the beach, and there's lifeguards that get you out of the water when there's a riptide. So having a pool at this location doesn't mollify those concerns.
Well, and again, the pool itself is totally conforming. It's the patio that we're discussing is the potential variance. And again, that's more of a hardship because, hey, if this building was built out further, which it could have been, and if you determined that the accessory structure, which had hardscape that was out further, that again had it attached to the accessory structure, and that the parking comes in off of Decatur Avenue, so technically all the cars that are parked there, which are causing noise and starting up and moving in and out, I would argue that this pool is certainly a safer alternative to that, and also is a less obtrusive as far as size and space taken up.
Can I ask a question based on what you just said? Would you agree with that, Craig, that the house could have been built further into the front yard?
The house?
Yes. The house
Bed and
itself.
breakfast?
The dwelling, right?
Yes, the dwelling.
Could have been built into this yard?
Could it be closer to the street?
Yes.
But without,
Yes, this-
without a variance, it could have been closer to the street.
Setback for Decatur Street is 20 feet, so it could be, that
And it's
front piece of
currently-
the structure could have been up to 20 feet.
And what is it currently, do we know? I know that's not part.
22.4, I believe.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So Andrew, you just went over some of the positives that you believe are advanced. Is it also your professional opinion that if this application were to be granted, variance relief associated with it were to be granted, do you see any substantial detriment to the public good or the zone plan or ordinance of the city of Cape May?
Again, I do not. It is an outdoor space that is private from the public in this location. It is an accessory structure that's on the property.
Are you adding the patio area on the building side, between the building and the pool?
Yes,
There's two patio areas.
yes, there are.
And that patio area proposed on the bottom is as far back as the pool, that 22 feet 10 inches?
Correct.
So
It
it's-
is.
It's not in front of the face, which is why we don't need relief with it.
And this is being run as a B&B?
Yes, tourist guest house is how they've been operating it. It's a guest house, Airbnb, yes.
I would question that, quite frankly.
It's-
My office is right around the corner.
No,
Huh?
they're saying no.
Okay.
There.
Okay.
It's a single-family house, right?
Hold on one second.
It's a guest house, it's how they've,
I don't mind, anyone has a chance to speak, but you have to be sworn in and speaking to a microphone, so you can't talk unless you're talking to a microphone, okay?
Maybe you could just clarify exactly how does this property operate?
as a guest house, as a.
How many rentals are in there?
There are, in terms of the number, I can tell you how many bedrooms are in there. In terms of how many rentals are in there at one time, I couldn't answer.
I'm hearing a whole house, so is it a whole house with 5 bedrooms?
There are eight bedrooms. There are eight bedrooms.
So one person would rent the entire structure, and they could probably bring in family, or do you rent out each room to different unknown people?
I believe it could, my understanding is that the way that they operate is typically for those,
You want to testify?
I don't.
So let's, you want to have someone,
It's, well, I
Mm-hmm.
don't have somebody here to do that at this point.
the one behind you, I thought your client was.
No, I don't have. What we've indicated is that it's a guest, and on the application where we put number of bedrooms, bath, we all had to include that on our application, and that is all set forth therein. But there's never, that's the amount of bedrooms. So in terms of how many people you can envision being there,
What I'm
It'll fit in that space.
questioning is, I'm unhappy with the pool at this location in town on that street. It adds a different flavor. But now we're talking about fencing and the plantings. I would like to, and we are going to, because you're going back to the HPC, I'd like to see how that pool is really going to be buffered from the street, and for the amount of people and how it's used. You know, if you're renting out 8 different units to many people, or you're renting it to one person and it's 8 bedrooms, that makes a difference in noise level, in my
Well,
experience.
their testimony is that it's a B&B. They're running out to 8 individual. It's not one single family run.
well, it could be done either way. There's no restriction on whether it's got to be this way or that way. And I know that they've had in the past, my clients, there's large, if they have a wedding party, they're going to take up the entirety of the dwelling. But it's not as if that has to happen every single time you rent it out.
I've always seen it as a whole house when I looked into it. It's always been a whole house.
I can easily get the answer to this, but I would need it.
I mean,
The internet will tell you.
Couldn't get down here.
I'm looking at it online, it says whole house rental.
Whole house rental. 8-bedroom, whole house rental.
Good thing you didn't testify.
But I know that, and that's what, you know, it's like wedding parties. It's things of that nature is with the intent that, you know, they try to bring them down when they're in the area at a local venue, and that's where they all try to stay in one location.
The use is a permitted use,
It is.
and the accessory use is a permitted accessory use. So we're not in a use variance analysis, okay? So I don't want us to get reversed on a use variance analysis. We're
The
not doing
appli-
use variance analysis.
The app is for a variance for the setback.
That's it.
That's it.
Right, to,
Mr. Chairman, could we hear from the public?
Well, I think, do you want to go over Craig's comments first? or-
I apologize.
However you would like to do it.
Yeah, that's your,
Do the normal way, I apologize.
Okay.
Let's hear Craig.
I'd like to summarize my August 13th, 2024 review memo for this application. It's at 501 Hughes Street. It's known as the Empress. It's in the RS Residential Seasonal District. You've heard testimony from the applicant indicating that is an existing tourist guest house with 8 bedrooms, and they're proposing a accessory swimming pool to be constructed. It's an 18 by 25-foot swimming pool. It has paver patio surrounds. Landscaping and fencing is proposed around the pool. No changes to the use or the building or parking are proposed. And the applicant is also seeking preliminary and final site plan approval, which is triggered because it is a tourist guest house.
Question about?
Sure.
I'm sorry to interrupt there, but I wanted to make the question related to parking. You indicate that it's an existing non-conforming. Do we have a record of a variance granted to this property for that?
I could not, the resolutions that I reviewed are not very specific with regards to that. I don't believe there was any relief granted for it, so I can't really answer that. I just assume it's an existing non-conforming situation.
Okay. Does the applicant have any history on that?
the resolutions that Mr. Hurlis reviewed are those that we reviewed as well. I don't think there's anything in the prior resolutions that I saw either that would indicate there was a variance specifically granted related to parking.
So they have
There was-
7, they're supposed to have 8, but it's sort of like a shadow variance?
It's been there, it's what exists.
Yeah, okay.
We're not adding rooms.
Thank you.
It's been a B&B for a long, long time.
Yeah,
The Bell Shield, remember?
Okay.
The 2010 resolution deals with the subdivision, and there was 3 lots, if I remember correctly.
it.
There used to be a bank with a drive-through there. That was taken down. There was a new single-family dwelling that was built next to this. Really, the improvements that were associated with that minor subdivision really didn't deal with this lot,
Okay,
okay?
yeah, that's fine.
I don't believe in the ENC term on these documents. Yeah, there's no such thing as an ENC. It's either PNC or it is a violation. They're the two choices. You have to establish it was a pre-existing non-conforming use with a variance, or that it predated the ordinance. That's one choice. Or it's an illegal structure. So the magic words ENC to me don't mean anything. But we have an ordinance in our town, because everything is so old and weird that we basically say, if it's been around, and I forget the numbers, but I think it's 20 years or something.
20.
This
It's
is,
been around for 20 years, and we have some issues finding old variances. Our system is not ideal, okay?
Yeah, that's right.
We had trouble finding variances, so pretty much if it's around for 20 years, we consider it a pre-existing non-conforming structure. I think that applies to parking as well, would be my assumption. So they kind of get a pass on that. But I just want to clarify that. Just because it exists there doesn't mean it's legal. It just means it's there. And then you have to do the steps. You have to find an old ordinance, an old variance, or you have to show that it's been there to meet our ordinance that creates that exception. Am I saying that right, Craig?
I believe you are.
Thank you. And by the way, as long as you weren't referring to me as being old and weird, I'll accept your explanation.
I have never put that on the record.
I could add a few adjectives.
Bill has on many occasions.
Can we vote on that?
Okay.
Okay, does that answer, your question was answered?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to continue into the completeness review, and this deals with the checklist required for preliminary site plan approval. So it falls under subsection 3 of that section 417-5C, and it transitions into letters, letter E. I've asked that additional grading information be provided around the pool and in the area of disturbance to make sure that there's no adverse impacts to any of the neighbors. That should be provided as a condition of approval. There was some information provided, but I didn't find that it was adequate. I needed additional information. It seems like this new plan shows a little bit more or a little greater detail, but I would like that to still remain a condition of approval to evaluate. Letter F is very similar. They have provided a stormwater system. However, we needed additional detail of that system to evaluate and make sure that we're satisfied with the design of that. So that should be provided as a condition of approval. Letter Q, the location of all outdoor lighting. I believe they've testified that there is no outdoor lighting other than the pool, that's the light that sits inside the pool, right? It's covered by water.
That is correct.
No additional lighting in this fenced-in area or anything like that proposed?
None.
Okay, so if that's going to be a condition of approval, therefore letter Q would go away. They're indicating that there is no lighting. Letters V requires an environmental impact statement. We supported a waiver from that since the site is primarily developed. And letter W, a traffic impact report. This is a permitted accessory use. They're not increasing traffic or parking on this site, so therefore we did support the waiver from those requirements. Therefore, recommended deeming the application complete. I'll move into the zoning review on page 3 of 6, which is the zoning tables. The first one is for the principal use. The only change there is the lot coverage requirement of the residential site improvement, residential seasonal district for tourist guest houses is 75%, 52.8% is existing. They're increasing that by 4.4% to 57.2%. Therefore, they are conforming, so they're not overdeveloping the lot with lot coverage. The next table down at the bottom of the page shows the swimming pool requirements. And I already read into the record before, as we voted on whether a variance was required or not, but there are setback requirements. So there's a 10-foot front yard setback that is being met. There's also a front yard setback requirement to the face of the structure. That means any pool, patio connected has to sit at least to the face of the structure, be located rearward of the face of the structure. In this case, the Decatur side, that patio is encroaching out further past the face of the structure. That is the variance that's necessary. 22.4 is the required setback. That's the setback to the face of the building. 10 foot is proposed to the front of that patio along the Decatur Street side. All of the other setbacks are met. The pool equipment has been relocated as per our request to conform with the setback requirements. The other patios have been modified to meet that minimum 10-foot setback on either side and the rear yard. And the fence and railing has been discussed. They are proposing that. We don't know what that is going to look like yet until they get comment back from the Historic Preservation Commission. So there's one variance that you have to grant along with the preliminary and final site plan approval. It should be conditioned on the general review comments on page 5 and 6. We've asked under item number 1 that the zoning table is revised to reflect the comments in the review memo. All the variants should be noted on the zoning table. Item number 2, the construction details must be provided for the proposed improvements, and we've asked for the paver patio details to include the bedding details. Item 3 is my review of the stormwater system that's proposed. Just to summarize, the plans must be revised to provide the design of the system with greater detail. Conceptually, we believe it's going to work. We just need the construction details and elevations on that. Item number 4. So our pool requirements were bolstered recently by the City Council, and it requires a 4-foot wide planted green space along the rear and side property lines within the rear yard to increase infiltration, add additional buffering, improve aesthetics, and provide space for grading and the conveyance of stormwater. So the plan that I initially reviewed is not the handout that you received there, but it omitted all of the landscaping along the rear property line. They're now showing that, but I would ask, because of the Environmental Commission review comments, I would ask that that plan be submitted to them to get their sign off before I review it and approve it. Okay, item number 5, we talked about the lighting. There's no other lighting proposed, only the low-voltage lighting within the pool is proposed. Item 6 is this requirement from the code that they have to provide the pool safety fencing. Once again, their plan indicates 4 or 4.5-foot fencing. That's going to be clarified, the height with the Historic Preservation Commission. 7 is our standard condition that we evaluate the sidewalk and require replacement of that to the satisfaction of the engineer prior to us issuing a certificate of occupancy. 8 is very similar, that we require the inspection escrow and that the CO or acceptance of the improvements shall not be issued until they receive a satisfactory inspection. 9 is that, once again, they have to provide the required performance guarantee and inspection escrow because this is a site plan. 10 is our standard condition because it is located within the historic district that they have to provide evidence of final Historic Preservation Commission approval. Number 11 is our conditions that they have to comply with the recommendations and requirements of the Fire Department, Police Department, Public Works Department, Environmental Commission, and Shade Tree Commission. We did receive an environmental, excuse me, let me get a sip of water here. All right, here we go. We did receive a Environmental Commission report dated, it looks like it is, where's their date? August 15th, 2024, it's buried in the comments. They recommended denial, and they've asked for more detail on that landscaping plan. That's why I'm recommended that they refer it back to them to get their sign off on it. Fire Department recommended approval dated 8/21/24. We received evidence of HPC approval, but we've already talked about that and how we're referring that back to them. The Police Department recommended approval dated 8/13/2024. Public Works Department recommended approval dated 8/15/24. Shade Tree Commission recommended approval August 21, 2024. None of those reports had any additional comments with the exception of the Environmental Commission, which that's going to be referred back to them. Okay, all right. Comment number 12, they're required to comply with any and all applicable affordable housing requirements at the time of approval or issuance of building permits as appropriate. And finally, should the board grant approval, they're required to revise the plans to address any conditions that the board sets and submit those to me for my review and approval. And that's a summary of my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions the board has.
Have any questions? Okay, then what we're going to do, we're going to open it up to the public.
Yeah, I have one question, just for clarity, where it says pool equipment with screening, is that the pumps?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
What do you mean by screening? Is that,
Screening, lattice screening.
all right, so that's all the pumps and all the equipment?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we will open up to the public. I would ask that you move your easel. Anybody wishing to speak, you come up to the, yeah, Ricky, put that up there. Come up to the podium and be sworn in.
This one.
I have a few extra copies of my remarks. Interested? For everyone who's going to speak tonight, the way you do it is, please, no.
No, okay, I'll take it.
For everyone who's going to speak tonight, please state your name, spell it, and then give me your street, and then I'm going to swear you in, and then you'll testify, okay? So you're going to be the first.
Oh, I'm the guinea pig.
Please state your name and spell it.
Thomas Scanlon, Scanlan.
Address?
128 Decatur Street.
Okay, sir, do you swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
There was a document that the clerk handed to me. Was that from you?
Yes, it's just some extra copies of my remarks.
Okay, we're going to just take your remarks as you present them.
Great.
Because we really can't take writings of things that have been said. So go ahead and just
No
testify.
worries.
Everyone will listen carefully.
You can recycle the paper. Okay, so my grandmother bought 128 Decatur Street in the late 1950s. My mother and my Aunt Marie Wendt acquired the house in 1967. My first job was at Frank's Playland. My social security card is 128 Decatur Street as my address, so I know the block, I know the character of the community. And I remember when that parcel of land in question was the Glenwood Annex. I remember when it was a drive-through bank, then a retail store, then a vacant eyesore for many years. Frank and Lois Curo bought that property and turned it into a showcase for the street at considerable expense and effort, asking nothing in return. Countless visitors to Cape May stop to admire and photograph this private garden every single day. I sit on the porch and see it. If you allow the variance and allow the pool, this attractive feature will be gone forever. Instead, we will have an in-ground pool, concrete patios, and absentee landlords providing absolutely no supervision over how that pool will be utilized. Remember, this is a whole house rental. The owners are never there. It's a business, not a home. A pool directly across the street from our house will have a negative impact on my lifestyle and that of my neighbors. It will impact my ability to enjoy my property. How do I know this? Well, where I live in Maryland, our neighbor behind us has a pool, easily 3 times the distance from this one. And there's a large stand of very tall, old trees in between, not 5-foot hollies, big trees. So we cannot see the pool, but we can hear it loud and clear. And if you live in Cape May, you know how sound carries. And if you know Decatur Street, you know how busy and loud it can be now. So let's not add an attractive nuisance to make it worse. Just the noise from the pool will have a negative impact on our street. And nobody really addressed that issue. They talked about the visuals and all that, but nobody talked about the noise. Then factor in the visuals, though. The patio, pools, umbrellas, towels, hardly Victorian, hardly historic. And there are other factors to consider, far too many for me and out of my area of expertise. The size of the proposed pool is way too big for the location. It's larger than the Icona pool for a 56-room hotel. That's crazy. And how much impervious surface? I'm not an engineer, but there's already a 7 to 8 car parking lot. So how much is too much? And then there's the amount of water. You know, that is a precious resource here in Cape May, water. So how much is water to fill and maintain a swimming pool? So and the list could go on. So in closing, the street address of the Empress is Hughes Street. So technically, the area for the proposed pool is a traditional rear backyard. But from Decatur Street, from our houses, it's a front yard, fully visible from the street. So we ask that you deny the variance and the pool. While the variance may not violate the letter of the law, it certainly violates the intent and spirit of the law. So thank you for your time. And my Aunt Marie has a few comments, and she's been around a lot longer than any of us.
You can stay there, as long as the mic goes over there, it's fine. Oh, caught her halfway.
You want to come, or?
Stay here, in case I don't hear.
State your name.
Marie Wendt, W-E-N-D-T.
Are you at 128 Decatur as well? Address?
Yes. I don't always understand, because I'm the elderly
Ma'am, do you swear to tell the truth?
member of this group.
Ma'am, do you swear to tell the truth?
You swear to tell the truth.
Okay, go ahead.
I swear.
Go ahead, ma'am. Go ahead. I have to test.
Decatur Street, we face right on 501, the side yard, which is very extensive. But Decatur Street for ever. We have been front porch people, front porch folks. We rest there, we eat there, we party there, we watch the world go by in front of us there. Our front porches on Decatur Street are the wonderful thing that we have, in spite of the fact that we have had some very bad things across the street where the swimming pool is proposed to be. For a long time, there was a house, a mini hotel on Hughes Street. And it went out of business a long time ago. But on Decatur Street was a house right in front of us, which was located in the where the proposed swimming pool will be. As time went on, the really nice little mini hotel left, and the house that was on Decatur Street where the proposed swimming pool will be, both of these houses were taken down. So what happened next is that the bank said, oh, you know, we have a drive-through. And pretty soon, we had a little building where the proposed swimming pool will be, and a loudspeaker talking to the people driving in their cars. The cars would come in Decatur Street and go out Hughes Street. Well, that went on for a while, but I guess the bank, I don't know, maybe people didn't like it. We didn't. So there was a little shop put there. So we had a shop there for a while. I don't know how long that went on. But guess what was next? A parking lot. And I'm talking about right in front of our eyes on Decatur Street. So I am opposed to a swimming pool there. The previous owner he restored the house at 501 beautifully. And at some point, the land where the garden is now and where the proposed swimming pool will be, he bought and made a beautiful garden, and we all sighed and said, oh boy, at last. And it has been a beautiful place where people love to look at it, and it was done really beautifully. But one of the main things that there is a fig tree there that's maybe 100 years old, because the family that lived next to where the garden is lived in that house, which is now a double thing, lived in that house for ever and planted this fig tree, and they just loved the fig tree, and on inspection now is healthy and beautiful and should never be destroyed. I am opposed to the swimming pool. I love the garden, and I thank you.
Anybody else like to speak?
Hello. My name is Kim Gagliardi, Gagliardi. I live on Perry Street, but I own the building adjoining the said property on Hughes. 215 Decatur Street.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Say it again.
We own the property on 215 Decatur. It's,
You swear affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do. I'll start with, I was not aware of the HPC, that it never really went to HPC. It was just approved by 3 people, which is kind of upsetting because of the size of the pool. I'm concerned about the size. We have Peter Shields in-town suites. So we have 2 suites upstairs. We rent the bottom. It's a store. I'm concerned about the noise. The area that is there now was referred to as a quiet area. That is going to totally change to a very noisy area. So I am concerned about the size of the pool affecting the privacy of my in-guests. I also want to comment on the Empress advertises on Airbnb, and they say that they can house 16-plus people, and they allow events, which I'm very concerned about, by adding a pool. So they're going to have events, bridal shower, small wedding, whatever, which is loud. And their Airbnb also states the incorrect time of the noise ordinance. It states 11 o'clock p.m. I think it's 10, so concerning. I'm also concerned about the character of the neighborhood, how it's going to affect the street view, the appearance and feel of a historic neighborhood. There's a pool right on the street front, a fence, loud splashing parties. That's what I see. Concerning the fig tree that was mentioned, that's on my property. I'm concerned about the roots. This fig tree is about 100 years old. So we maintain that tree. We pick the figs off of it every year. You know, we're trying to preserve the tree. I don't want that to be affected. And I'm also concerned that this could lead to more applications for similar variances to be granted in the future. You know, we renovated this building next door. We had to jump through hoops to go everything through HPC, and to find out tonight that no one had to go through HPC is very upsetting. So my other concern is when you have that many people in a pool, I don't know, do you need a lifeguard? What's the safety issue there? The pool equipment, is it going to be on my side of the property? Is this filter running through the night where my in-guests are sleeping? You know, I don't know. I don't know where all that is going. And I'm concerned about the 6-foot fence, as everyone has discussed, that's along the street, which probably isn't going to be very pretty. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Hello. I'm Kate Emerson. I live at 130 Decatur Street.
I'm sorry, can you just say your name again and spell it for me slowly?
Kate Emerson, Emerson.
Thank you. Address?
130 Decatur Street.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
So 130 Decatur Street is right across the street from the proposed demolition of the park. Tonight, the owners are asking the City of Cape May Planning Board to waive the carefully constructed setback standards for pools and other structures in backyards, which basically says, as you all know, that pool structures are not allowed closer to the property line than the main structure of the house, and according to the HPC standards, which I read, are to be hidden from the view of passersby. Perhaps the standard should actually include hidden from the view and the noise this structure may cause to passersby and those living close by. In this instance, as you know, the main structure is 22.5 feet from the property line, and the proposed structure consisting of fencing, patio and pool, greenery, etc., are on or very close to the property line on Decatur Street. MAC often leads walking tours along this sidewalk. And MAC runs trolley tours that drive by, pointing out some of the private cottages and this beautiful garden and its statuary. The people who live on Decatur Street, in some cases, their parents owned and restored these houses, love Cape May, as their parents did. I'm also concerned about the precedent that will be set for other corner lot rental properties in the historic district, whose owners might think that they could also add such a money-making feature as a pool to attract more business and charge higher rates. I'm thinking about places like the Mainstay Inn, the Abbey, the Queen Victoria. They and others all have some form of back or side yard that sits on the street in the primary historic district and could be used for a pool. Imagine pools on Columbia, pools on Stockton Place. Also, the Seven Sister Houses on Jackson Street, whose backyards face the street. I can just imagine how the ambiance of Jackson Street would change with pools lining the street side of those little architectural gems. But not just pools. Pools come with beach balls flying into the street, kids screaming, "Where's Waldo?" Parents yelling, "Stop running." In other words, having fun in the pool, which is great, but not in the historic district, prized for its adherence to architectural and historic values. I and Cape May visitors who come here love Cape May, not for the swimming pools that are starting to pop up through the town. No, I love Cape May, and the visitors love Cape May for the tree-lined streets that evoke a different time, a quiet time, the sound of clip-clopping horses-drawn carriages in the evenings, and the gardens with hydrangeas and daisies peeking out between the slats of the picket fences. And not for the noise of a pool party that 6 to 8 carloads of families can generate, which is what is normally parked at the Empress during the summer. I and my neighbors actually live here, and we have a vested interest in protecting the character of our street and our neighborhood. And that's why I'm here to ask that the variance not be granted so that the garden can be saved and the special streetscape of Decatur Street in the center of the historic district be protected. Thank you.
We're a twosome. Okay, my name is Jane Lyons, and this is my husband, Mark Sucher. Some of you,
Please spell your name.
oh, sorry,
That's
sorry.
okay, I just have to write it.
I'm sorry.
We're going to
Jane,
make you famous in a resolution, you want your name spelled right, don't you? So make sure it's good. Jane,
Jane, Jane, Lyons, Lyons. Want my age?
oh man, I would never ask.
And my name's Mark Sucher, S-U-C-H-E-R. S-U-C-H-E-R. First name Mark with a K.
Some of you may remember my mom and dad.
I just need your address and then.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Address?
124 Decatur Street and 516 Carpenter's Lane. We own both of those buildings.
Okay, do each of you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
We do. I do.
Sorry. Some of you may remember my mom and dad, Jane and John Bratton. 60 years ago, in 1964, when the ferry came back again into space, they made a decision to buy our house at 124 Decatur Street, and we have lived across the street from Hughes Street ever since. We don't think the pool is a happy place anymore if this goes through. I know that Marie has taken care of this. Everybody has taken history and all of that. What's really important to us is that when Frank and Lois came to Cape May, they bought Fort Lot 11? Yeah, okay. They had already restored the Empress, and they wanted this to make it a complete piece. And now we think that this magic garden, as we call it, I don't know if anybody else does, but it's a magic garden. I want to show you it. Here is...
We'll mark that picture as 01.
01, yeah, I've got Exhibit 1 written on it already.
I'm sorry, it's so small. And
We'll pass it around.
Yeah, we've got lots.
Okay, we
Everybody want some?
one for everybody here.
Hold on, I've got some.
Okay.
I've got to
Okay.
deconstruct here for a minute, excuse me.
Okay.
Sorry about the mess, guys.
And also, what we have for you, because my eyes aren't as good as they used to be, so we
You got to use the microphone. We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. This is something that we just blew up from the plan because our eyes aren't as good as they used to be, and it's very tight when we go over to the building here to get a look at stuff. We could hardly see it. What was it? Is it 4 feet? Is it, what is it?
We have that in front of us.
Yes, okay, so you have that. Now, what I want to show you is this pool is 540 square feet, just the pool. Here's Congress Hall. This is a pool that is 450 square feet. And with all of this, it gives you kind of an idea, because the flat plan doesn't really help me. I need a picture. And so if you look at this, this is it's a plan that could be, Okay. So when you see this, we have put around what the dimensions are so you can see it, because this is not a square look down from, the sky. But it does show how what is it, a 30 by 50?
It's 15 by 30,
Yeah, which is
450 square feet.
fewer square feet than what is going to go into the small, beautiful magic garden.
Mark the picture of the Congress Hall pool as 02. How did you measure the pools?
We actually,
Okay.
forgive me, we called Congress Hall and asked them for the measurements, so they provided that to us.
Can you repeat those measurements? Because I couldn't hear you.
Certainly, the measurement of the adult pool, because there are two pools at Congress Hall. There's the large pool, and then there's the adult pool, and the adult pool is 30 feet by 15 feet. The proposed pool is, by the way, 18 feet by 25 feet. I'm happy to give them a hand up, but if you read your proposal and the site plan in front of you, it reads 540 square feet. I think someone did a typo. That really should be 450, because it was back where the 18 by 25 is in fact 450, identical to the pool size at Congress Hall.
Which is, this is what will look at, we were talking about umbrellas and how far are the,
Interrupt for a moment and
Certainly.
and go over what you just said, because 18 by 25 is 450.
Correct.
So
Do you want to address that?
The total square footage is, the water's edge is 18 by 25, but then there's coping around the pool. So we
Gotcha.
wanted to include that coping, so we had an accurate dimension as far as that.
So in fact, thus,
It's called, it's impervious.
yeah, impervious surfaces.
Yeah. So,
Can I
go
go?
ahead.
Okay,
I'll go back.
thanks.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I just have a few more comments I'd like to make. Let me get my glasses on so I can see. Forgive me for a moment. Now, the applicant is requesting a variance based on, it's not a hardship variance. Could someone remind me again?
What's the question, sir?
If the application is not for, I'm sorry? Substantial benefit. Okay, so the question becomes substantial benefit to whom? Because the real question becomes, this pool is, as you've all learned now, that it's substantial. And it causes, it offloads its harm to the other properties around it, whether it's going to be noise to the folks right next door, whether it's noise across the street. It could actually, in a weird way, cause problems for the city of Cape May because a 4-foot fence, honestly, and we've walked up and down on Ocean, that 4-foot fence, while useful at all the motels, does it really discourage somebody who's coming out of at 2 a.m. or 1 a.m. out of the bars from saying, oh, there's a pool, let's go check this out. And again, what they're proposing, or at least what they were proposing before it goes back to HPC, was that 4-foot fence backed up by 5 to 6 foot tall American hollies. And the American hollies have a growth rate of 6 inches a year sideways and vertical. So for 23 hollies that are being planted, the question is, what's the spacing between them? How quickly is that going to grow together to create that impermeable wall that actually shields the pool? I'm not a gardener, much of a gardener, but I've looked that up, so I've tried to figure this out. I had beautiful language written, I'm just trashing it, sorry. Just so you get a sense of substantial benefit. This whole pool is about incremental revenues. Let's talk about it in an economic sense. A pool there is going to be, let's say, a $100,000 investment by the time they're done, getting all the folks. If I'm high, tell me. If I'm low, tell me. But the point of it is substantial investment. And let's say they're currently getting $15,000 a week in the summer, or they're making $7,000, including Airbnb fees, in the winter, or in October. Sorry, that's the next avails. Not 1,000. My apologies. And so the question really becomes, and I know you're not here to judge the economics of it, but if you're doing a comparative analysis of substantial benefit, the question is substantial benefit to whom? And also, if I understand the opportunity for this commission, is that it also looks at the harm that a change can make. So we've talked about, who gets harmed, who benefits. I don't want, look, we own 516 Carpenter's Lane. That's the peanut butter company. We know what it is to have a good tenant in there and them wanting to make money. We support their opportunity to make money. They've actually been good neighbors and worked with us. But in this case, I think it's a pool too far. Finally, I'm just going to wrap up very quickly. If you deny the variance, what do? Do they put in that oversized pool, the supersized pool, as I call it? Do they shrink the pool and put in decks around it so that they're more consistent with a smaller pool size? Don't know that, but it's possible. And so that's perfectly doable under the code, because at that point, if you push the deck back to where the pool starts, you accomplish a couple things that developers are very good at: saving money. And you could, in fact, save part of that garden up front that still allows you to have that view of Cape May as a Victorian paradise, and yet allow them to have a smaller pool in the back. I'm offering a what-if, something that is not an either-or. Again, I personally prefer no pool, but if, I don't want to get in the way of them making some money, because that's why they have it. Yeah, but that doesn't deal with noise. That's,
Ma'am,
no, the question.
you have to be in a microphone and you can't talk.
Okay, let me.
Read a recorded record for the appellate court, so they have to be able to hear the person testifying, and I can't have testimony coming from the audience, okay?
Janie, I can cover that point. The question still remains, how do they deal with the noise issue? It's a happy noise. We all know that pools, by and large, are happy noises, but it's still noise. And it's a, I was going to be churlish and say, look, put the pool in, you're going to be introducing people with a taste of Wildwood before they get to any of the historic streets of Cape May. And I'm sorry, that's harsh, but it feels that way if you get a deck and a pool and all the noise. That's my point, and I thank you very much for your patience.
Anybody else care to speak? Okay, well, hearing none, we will close the public portion. Take a 5-minute break? Sure. Take a 5-minute break.
Microphones off, please.
Okay, we're back in session.
Thank you for the ability to take that time. I spoke to my client. We obviously have heard some concerns amongst members. I've heard the concerns of the public. Something that we just discussed that my client is agreeable to do is in an effort to alleviate the need for any variance relief whatsoever, which I know was some concern from the public, is the proposed patio paver area, or paver patio area, along the Decatur Street frontage of the property to the left of where the pool is. We propose to eliminate that in its entirety. We propose just continuation of the grass that surrounds it at this point in time, and by doing so, we no longer protrude into the front yard setback in any way, and it eliminates the need for that variance. We'd essentially be here on a site plan application at that point. We know that there were concerns related to the fence and addressing the concerns of the Environmental Commission, which I think we can accomplish fairly relatively easily given the revised plan that we have here and the ability to go back to the board for clarity on the fence. But we would propose to eliminate that and make this strictly a site plan application conditioned on those, obviously those two things along with everything else discussed by Mr. Hurlis tonight.
Could I ask one more clarification?
Yes.
Let me go get my mic. I picked up, there was quite a bit of concern from neighbors, I think from board members, with regards to screening along Decatur and the proposed landscaping. And I know you have to go back to the Environmental Commission.
Yeah.
But I think a more effective screening at the front along that property line would go a long way to make a lot of people happier.
In terms of a...
Screening the fence, basically.
Yeah, on the backside of the fence,
Well,
screening.
screening on the backside, but also on the
Yeah.
street side, so you're not seeing the fence, you're seeing more of a green hedge.
Make a almost impenetrable.
Yeah, you don't want to see anything.
Landscaping feature along that front.
Understood.
It kind of focuses the noise and
Understood completely.
Okay.
I can adhere to that.
Like maybe 10 feet,
What's that?
10, 12 feet or so, not just a 5-foot
In terms of the
depth of the land.
of the proposed landscaping.
I mean, I'm just throwing.
So you're talking 2 or 3 deep in a sense, is kind of what you're looking for there, I think.
Rich, I have a legal question. A swimming pool in this zone is a permitted use.
Accessory use.
It's been accessory use. Does this board have the authority to not permit that use?
No. No, double negative.
I actually didn't.
You have to you have to permit a permitted use. You have to permit a permitted accessory use. It's not a use analysis.
So to the extent that it's permitted, does the weighing of the balance between substantial benefit and substantial detriment come into the play
There was no variance analysis.
necessary for that?
As the plan is modified, there's no variance analysis, but there still is a site plan analysis. And it's a by right site plan, meaning you have to approve a site plan, but you still are allowed to consider the impact of the proposed use on surrounding properties, and buffering and landscaping, similar to traffic design and traffic flow and mounds they put around shopping centers and all that stuff. Even in a by right site plan, you still get to manipulate the site plan in a way that conforms to the purposes of the ordinance. So asking for additional landscaping for sound and sight on Decatur isn't appropriate in the request, even in a by right site, even in a by right application. So I have no issues with the comments of the engineers. The applicant seems amenable to trying to create a sight and sound buffer as best they can with landscaping in the front, but you cannot deny a permitted use or permitted accessory.
You can condition it, but you can't deny it.
You're doing a site plan analysis.
Yes. Let me ask you a question to the applicant. If you look at your plan, then there's the wooden fence. How far into the property currently does the grotto go?
Does the what?
The grotto, the front piece.
The grotto, like the mermaid, the grotto.
It's a religious term. I didn't want to.
You're talking about the grotto that's in the center of the landscaped area?
The current, yeah.
That existing, they don't have a technical setback to that, but it's it's very close to the middle of the lot, middle of the back of the property. So I would say that it's approximately, about 30 feet to the center of it, and the grotto is about, a 12 by 12 structure. So give or take 24 feet to the edge of the grotto.
So from the property line where the fence you have, how far toward the pool does the current grotto go? Help me out on that.
So the edge of the grotto is actually,
The inside edge of the grotto.
and again, we're talking about the existing structure
Yes.
that's there. That inside edge of the grotto is approximately, it's about where the edge of the pool would be. I'm just eyeballing it from down on the 22.4, but it's pretty darn close to touching probably where the edge of the pool would have been.
Okay. The second question, where's the current fig tree located? The 100-year-old fig tree?
I think some indicated it was on a neighboring property.
Yes,
Oh,
it's on
that's
the
over
neighboring
here.
property.
Okay. All right.
And again, I actually happen to own a fig tree, and I happen to have a pool right next to a fig tree. And I can tell you that figs are almost impossible to kill. And I don't want to kill my fig tree because I love my green figs as well. My pool is literally 5 feet from my fig tree. You have a 10-foot setback from the rear and the side property lines. There ain't no way this pool's going to kill that fig tree. The only way that thing's going to get killed is somebody poison that thing to death. You cannot kill it. You can stump it down. And if they need another fig tree, I've grown fig trees as well. So
But it's not on your property?
it's not on our property, but we will do everything in our power to make sure we don't damage the roots.
All right, so, and in your presentation, you talked about the substantial benefits. And I don't want to be offensive, and I don't want to hurt your feelings, but a lot of that is, I consider to be fairly specious, because you're not addressing anything but what's good for the property owner. Now,
Well-
We've eliminated that.
Right. That was in regard to the variance that we were asking for.
yes, I understand that. But in eliminating the variance, are we allowed to spitball here?
No,
No?
no,
Me-
no spitball, that's how you get reversed on things. No
Oh,
spitballing.
okay. All right.
You can make conclusions, you can ask questions, but no spitballing.
Okay. Would it be, I'll ask a question. Would it be possible to make the pool smaller and keep the grotto as a streetscape presentation?
I don't know, then that would be considered part of the pool, and then I need a variance for the grotto, because it's at a part of the pool now, like it's an outdoor feature for the pool. It sounds like the board's already made a determination.
The
that
grotto's gone,
Well, but you said keep the grotto.
yes.
Well, now is that attached to the pool?
I would move, would it be possible to move the pool back? What I'm talking about is the grotto that currently exists on that property is a pleasing streetscape, and much more pleasing than a wooden fence.
But I'm going to need the fence either way, so the only way to do that would be
No,
to
you have a
relocate.
fence there, it's a wrought iron fence,
But you can't use that fence to surround the pool, it's not pool legal.
just use it for the grotto. I'm just, this is,
Okay.
trying to salvage some benefit here, because frankly, the calculus of weighing substantial benefits, substantial detriments is not looking good.
I would like to address the time, I spoke of it earlier, the time that that pool is being used. If we could put some limitation, closing that pool down at 9 PM, that would help the neighbors as well, I think.
That's
I don't know
another
what
reason
would
for
be
no extra
amenable
lighting.
to you, but I think there has to be some limitations for this neighborhood.
That's reasonable.
Shouldn't they just, isn't there a noise ordinance?
There's a noise, and I was going to address, and listen, I say this, I was formerly the prosecutor in this town. I know that this town, when there's a noise complaint, they prosecute it. It's not something that goes unheard of or unanswered. It's prosecuted. And if here, there's a noise issue, calling the police is the effective way to deal with it.
They should not have to call the police. There should be a shutdown at 9 PM, and nobody should have to call anybody. They should know that that's the rule and follow it.
Understood.
This verbal change in the plans, how can we vote on that? We don't have to vote on that if we change it, but then we don't know that they're changing it.
If they're changing to eliminate a variance, you can't punish them for eliminating a variance.
No, but yeah, that's my question. I don't want to punish them. I want to know what we can and can't do about it.
What I mean is, I don't understand the question. Are you saying, do they have to come back for another meeting because they eliminated?
Are they in fact going to change the plan?
They've eliminated a patio to remove a variance. We let people remove variances.
Right, okay, yeah, right. Are you going to remove the patio?
Yes, sir.
The compliance plans will show no patio. It will also show reduction in coverage if it's applicable and anything, but it's not going to exacerbate anything that was already listed. It'll only make things better.
It's my opinion, you can grant preliminary and final tonight. You're looking at the same plan, just minus that patio. So there's less impervious.
With the addition of more screening, though.
Yeah, more screening.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, if you were uncomfortable with the Environmental Commission looking at the screening and then me signing off on that, then I'd recommend bringing them back. But other than that, there's no reason why not to grant preliminary and final condition on anything that you set forth.
Okay.
What they give to the Environmental Commission would be a completed plan, though, correct?
Yes.
I mean, they would look at how it is, just less the patio.
Correct.
Yes.
And they've agreed to provide.
Yeah,
more
I mean,
buffer.
ultimately, they're going to look at a finished plan, the Environmental Commission.
That is correct.
I just have a quick question. So they have 12-foot of buffer to put the screening of planting in, right? And we're not voting on the pool. Why does the patio have to go?
The patio requires the variance.
But we can still do that. I mean, it's not
Could grant-
affecting.
you could
The
grant
argument's
variance.
not the patio, it's the pool, and we can't vote on that. So,
Yeah, because it's a site plan, we're voting on it.
no, but I'm saying the concerns are with the pool, not the patio. So why do they have to take the patio away? They still have 12-foot of buffer to put plantings in. Why can't
Well,
they keep going with the variance?
they run the risk of, no, we'll deny them, yeah.
And the other, I will say, because we just considered that, I think the other aspect and public concern that we're trying to address by removing that too, is when you have a patio there was the concern about gatherings and more noise, and by removing that, I think we're going to, you can never alleviate noise altogether, but we'd certainly be proposing to lessen it by doing that.
Can I ask a question, a more basic one, but do you have any idea if it's a salt water or a regular chlorine?
I do not know.
I'm just throwing it out there that salt water, especially for smell, I would assume that the neighbors would prefer that.
I could certainly discuss it. I can't outright agree to it tonight,
It's
though.
expensive to operate. I switched mine to salt water.
Mine's saltwater too. But I can't answer that.
I'm just,
Right now.
Understood.
it's dense here, right? So I'm just saying, if I was the neighbor, I would not want to smell the chlorine. Maybe I'm a little more sensitive than others, but.
No.
And I think, first off, I appreciate that the owner was willing to do that, hearing the concerns of the public. And I would definitely appreciate the 9 PM hours of operation. I think that's important because if this were a commercial property, we would be talking a lot more about that, right? But it is a whole house rental. So I think establishing some of those rules is important for the community. I just, nothing to do with the variance or the site plan, but I feel for some of the comments that were made tonight as mayor. Totally
Understood.
separate from a variance discussion. People called it a porch street. I agree with that. And I just said to my fellow council member, we're going to have to look at the side yards on pools because I just don't see this area as a pool area. I don't. That has nothing to do with the site plan, nothing to do with the variance that's now gone. But I just say that for the record that I don't like this location for a pool. I would like to see it 25 feet, I think is pretty big. That was said as the measurements. I don't think they're going to have any renters or potential renters say, hey, I'm not coming because it's not 22 feet. You know, I think you could get that down to 20, 22 feet. I think that would be, I just look at this is going to get attention. People are going to walk by this. They're going to see a new pool here. I think minimizing this a little bit would make a difference for me personally. Again, 22 feet over 25 feet, but I think it makes it a little bit The point of some of the pools at other locations at hotels in town actually resonates with me a little bit on a site plan issue. So I'd like to see if we could minimize it a little bit personally.
Yeah, if I could comment just quickly, I would have been a definite no, because I think it's out of character for the neighborhood. I feel for the neighbors. I don't see it being a positive thing on, which, when we're granting a variance, we want to see some positive impact from it. I didn't see that. I agree with a number of Zach's comments. I think that's pretty important. But, try to do your best to make this thing, not noisy, not visible, and
Smaller.
hopefully, the smaller the better, yeah. But, good luck with it.
Are we now not voting on anything, right? There's nothing to vote on.
Preliminary and final site plan.
It's a site plan.
Yeah.
Can I just say one thing, Bill? While I agree with Mrs. Reed about noise, I don't think it's a good practice to put special times on different properties, because eventually, who's going to keep track of all that? There's a noise ordinance that they follow. They follow it. Why should they be any different than anybody else?
I think you could just say noise ordinance.
Pardon me?
Rather than a specific time, you can just say in compliance with the noise ordinance.
But that would, I think, the noise ordinance allows till 10 PM, which is what we were okay with, but I think that's in opposite to kind of what, we're trying to restrict it a little more, and I understand, I get it.
But that's going to be impossible to enforce when everybody's got a different time. Like, how do you know if the noise ordinance needs to be lowered to 9 o'clock, then move it back for everybody? Because the pool on Decatur Street is no louder than the pool on Maryland Avenue, and why should those,
Well, because these owners agreed to it.
okay.
And any more, this information's on the internet now. Anybody buying the house goes online, they see it, that there's resolutions that are public record. You've got to stick by it, too.
To his point, Mr. Chairman, in regards to commercial properties, again, not that this is, but I think most of the hotels in Cape May have even their own rules that are, the pools close at 8 PM or what, and I'm not suggesting that number, by the way. I'm just saying, you see, no lifeguard on duty, pool is closed at dusk. I mean, that's pretty standard.
I can say that we agree to a reduction to 9 PM, and I'd ensure that be part of the resolution, we could abide by that. In terms of a reduction in size, I can't sit here and agree to it right now, but I can agree to a reduction in hours of operation, the additional buffering that's been talked about along Decatur, subject to environmental approval.
You could impress upon the owners that we very much appreciate it if they looked at the size of that pool.
Yeah, absolutely. I can do that.
Goes a long way.
Same thing with saltwater as opposed to freshwater. I'll do the same thing with that item.
And it'd be nice if the property owner would show up.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Put you in a bad position.
I understand.
All right, any more discussion? Then somebody care to make a motion for preliminary and final, subject to the conditions of which is going to elaborate?
The motion I recommend being made, but how you vote is up to you, is a motion to approve preliminary and final site plan approval, subject to the waivers and conditions outlined by the board engineer on pages 2 and 3 of his report. The waivers being I'm going to ask a question of Craig. Craig? We waived V, but that's the environmental, but they are going back to the environmental commission, so I'll mention that later, right?
No, that's.
But not for an impact.
That's an impact
I
study.
understand, I just didn't want to cloud that.
Gotcha.
Okay, I'll get back to that. And the traffic study is waived, and the conditions 1 through 13 on pages 5 and 6, with a note on number 4 that the new plan must have environmental commission approval. That's the 4 foot in the rear, Craig wanted the environmental commission to look at that as well. And then the other conditions I made note of as the application changed is that the patio is going to be removed, the one on the Decatur side, so that there's no variance required. The entire patio is being removed, the one towards Decatur. There will be a more effective screening along Decatur with a depth of 10 or 12 feet, to which the applicant agreed, and it'll be approved at the discretion of the Environmental Commission and Mr. Hurlis. It doesn't need to come back to the board as long as those two are okay with it. The applicant agreed to close the pool at 9 p.m. And the mayors and other members of the board requested that the owner consider making the pool smaller and that salt water be used. That's not a condition, but a suggestion by the community leaders. And the, just want to check if there are any commissions up, things up higher. Those are, and the larger condition, that the issues regarding the gates and fences are remanded to the HPC for approval before its full board, but the planning board is not in favor of any fence that has a height that is not consistent with the ordinance, and specifically requests the board clarify if the existing iron fence is to be replaced with wood fence, and whether the fence or fences are appropriate for the historical landscape. Those are the conditions. As I see them, that's the motion I recommend being made, but how you vote is up to you. If you're going to vote no, I'd ask you to articulate why and tie it to site plan considerations, because the variance analysis is not appropriate for this decision.
Just one more suggestion on the fence. If you're going to put the wood fence in, maybe put that inside the buffer area, leave
Leave the wrought iron that's there along.
wrought
yeah.
iron there and move it inside.
Absolutely.
And I have one more suggestion. When you put a pool in, usually there's signage at the pool for safety, no diving. Maybe on that sign, it could be put, pool closes at 9 p.m. if you're going to stick with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other comments before we vote? Okay, we need somebody to make that motion.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Councilmember Yeager motions, Mr. Lundholm seconds. Mayor Mullick?
The issues that I have with this application are outside of this motion, so I vote yes.
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mrs. Reed?
I agree with the mayor, yes.
Mr. Crowley?
Just a comment before I vote. I'll be brief. The straitjacket this committee has been put in by their current ordinances makes this a very embarrassing thing to have to do, in my personal opinion. A swimming pool on the side yard of a historic, in a historic district, which is the main attraction for why Cape May is a Victorian national treasure, renders at least that portion of Decatur Street no more than a street in Wildwood with a motel in the front yard, with a swimming pool rather in the front yard. And it's just so inappropriate, I can't even see straight. But we don't have any choice because our ordinances are putting us in this kind of a bind. Frankly, it's embarrassing for Cape May that we have to do this. It's embarrassing for all of us that we have no choice but to do this. And one of the things on this agenda later on is a consideration of master plan recommendations, one of which is, for the last 20 years, to do something about swimming pools and tighten up that ordinance so that it speaks to the general benefit of the public and not the particular benefit of one property owner. In my mind, there's no question that the detriments outweigh this, but we don't have the right to say no. So in that case, and with those conditions, I am voting yes.
Mr. Lundholm?
Yes.
Mr. Riggs?
Yes.
Mr. Paducis?
I had to reiterate what Mr. Crowley just said. Excuse me, as a resident of Hugh Street myself and living in the historic district, for the past 5 years, we've seen a lot of properties sold and become full house rentals I've seen towels over banisters, railings. I've seen just things outside the house that shouldn't be there when they were individual homes. I see nothing that this will do to enhance Cape May and the Historic District in any way. I don't know what to say on this. I really don't. But we're forced to say yes. So with that, I have to say yes. You know, but I'm sorry, I have to say yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Bezare?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
I know.
Okay, so we have one more item on the agenda, which is not really going to be a discussion thing tonight. We're just going to go over with Craig. Hold on a second. Going to go over with Craig. Well, Craig's going to go over with us some of the areas that he thinks we should be thinking about, and when we get together next time, we'll be talking about these different areas. Craig, I'll turn it over. Come in.
I'm just waiting until it settles down out there. Okay, are we ready? Okay, I prepared a memorandum dated June 24, 2024, in which I highlight sort of the status of where we are with the recommendations that were contained in the master plan reexamination. And we've been picking away at quite a few of those items. So I'd like to commend the governing body as well as the planning board for not just throwing the master plan re-exam on the shelf and not doing anything. They've been actively working at implementing the recommendations on there. So that being said, there are some heavier lifts that are contained within there, and so I'm looking just as a topic of discussion as to where we want to focus on next with getting more of these items implemented. So I went through, and this is in the exact same format that is contained in the master plan reexamination. So I went through and sort of just took a look at what items were the easier lifts and easier to achieve. Item number one, and I'm going to briefly go through the report. If we want to circle back and get more detailed discussion, fine. But item number one deals with definitions. Item two, just implementing the modern language for the intent of residential districts. 3, 4, and 5 all deal with affordable housing. I can let you know that the city is actively working towards complying with their affordable housing. You're going to be dealing with that in the coming year, regardless of whether you want to or not. But I would just take a time out and hold off on that and wait till that comes to you, because there are some items that need to be addressed, I guess, internally before it gets in front of you with regards to the plan. Item number 6 and 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 were all addressed. Item number 13 through 17 deals with the Village Green. In my opinion, that's one of the more complex studies and efforts that's going to have to be done with regards to the recommendations that are contained within that. In my opinion, I think there's more study that's involved in that, in making those recommendations. And I think that's 13 through 17 deal with the R4 district, which is our Village Green area. Item number 18 was addressed. 19 should be a priority. That's very easy. It's just incorporating the beach uses that are in the S1 district along Beach Avenue. Our ordinance is kind of vacant. It doesn't account for those. Item number 20, I said was not addressed. The way that it was written, there was no recommendations were made at this time, but tonight's meeting highlights this. Discuss the possibility to address the standards for pool regulations. I think we're prioritizing that tonight after tonight's discussion, right?
And that, Craig, was the recommendation I was referring to.
Yeah, and I thank you for picking up on that, and so I highlighted that on my report. Item 21 is a little heavier use. Item 22, 23, and 24, I know that some members, including the mayor, have expressed some prioritization of these, and they deal with parking in the C1 district as well as workforce housing. So I know that that was important to some people, but that those 22, 23, 24 all dovetail into that. And if we're dealing with parking, 26 and 27 also would dovetail into that. Item number 28 was addressed through ordinance. Item 29 deals with fencing. That has not been addressed. We talked about fencing tonight, so that might be prioritized. Item number 30, 31, 32 were all addressed by ordinance. 33 deals with parking standards. We could roll that. I think the parking should all be dealt with comprehensively when we're dealing with that. Item number 34 was not addressed. That's stormwater. That was pretty simple. We could probably prioritize that. 35 is lighting standards. We talked a little bit about that tonight, but the governing body has adopted dark sky ordinance that deals with lighting. It ended up in a different section that's not part of our zoning code. So I'm recommending that we bring those into our zoning code so that they, now require site plan review as well as variance control on that. So, but I mean, I think the framework for the lighting standards has been sort of set forth. Okay, 36 and 37, 38 have all been addressed by ordinance. I won't even talk about those. Item number 39 is upgrade building codes and zoning laws that are consistent to reflect the increased risk of storms and floods. Item 40 is revise the checklist application requirements. Those two items have not been addressed. They might be a little heavier lifts are involved, a little more work with regards to those. Item 41, 42 have been addressed by ordinance. Item 43 were recommended changes that affect FEMA. I know that there's pending legislation with regards to that, so I would recommend that we defer that and wait for recommendations from our floodplain manager with regards to that and the pending legislation and changes. 44 deals with the Cape May Housing Authority recommendation. I can tell you that the city is moving forward with bringing them into the fold with regards to our affordable housing compliance. So stay tuned with that, and that's ongoing, but we don't really need to do anything with that yet. As well, and then 45 just deals with the implementation committee is sort of what we're doing. This, de facto, we are serving as the implementation committee for these recommendations, and that is an ongoing process too. So, and I'm just going to turn it loose to the board members. Is there any specific things that they would like to focus on and have me sort of bring forth for first?
Couple comments, real quick.
Sure.
Parts of the, you say it's already been done by code, and in some sections you cite the code, but could you cite the code on all of those just so we know where to find the changes that were made?
I can do that.
Okay.
There were several different ordinances, so I didn't cite them. I just,
Yeah,
but I can, the next version of this, I will have.
that's what I mean. Yeah, just an edit, really. The second point I wanted to bring up is the fact that the current master plan was struck in 2019, and in 2020, we had the whole COVID thing. And I think in terms of reviewing the master plan, we need to be very sensitive to the fact that the COVID experience changed almost the fabric of what this community is in terms of housing, in terms of commercial acquisition of public land for outdoor seating and the whole thing. I think we need to maybe make a new section, if you want to, that deals with the impact of COVID on the nature of this community. And I take a reference back to something the mayor said at a committee meeting recently, and that is that we really need to take a close look at what Cape May is and what we want it to be, especially in light of the fact that so many things have changed in Cape May because of COVID. So a section on COVID, I think, might be a good idea going forward, a COVID impact.
The only concern is when we're doing this as a planning board, that was never a part of the
Right.
reexamination. I think moving forward, when we're looking at these other recommendations, we can look at it through the lens of experiencing COVID, but we can't add a new section to the master plan unless we open up that process again.
That's fair. That'll be fine. If that's the approach, that's a good approach. I like that. Yeah.
I'm not advocating to open that up.
No, but
I'm just telling you, that's what
But I
has to
think what
happen.
you're advocating is that any future changes we make to this are going to be sensitive to the impact of COVID.
Yeah, we've all experienced it. I think, I definitely agree with your statement. The world has changed since
And
COVID.
Our housing stock has changed, the commerce of Cape May has changed considerably.
I would agree.
And so we're really behind the eight ball in terms of planning for what Cape May could be if we don't consider that as quickly as possible. That's just a comment. Okay, that's all I had to say.
Okay, well then, the next meeting, or next workshop, we'll tackle these things
I'm going to
numerically.
start,
Pardon me?
I'll start drafting memos to try and frame the logistics of these new ordinances, recommended ordinances, or just items for discussion that we need to, get consensus from the board before we move forward with a draft ordinance.
Well, the reason I asked Craig to go over that tonight was so that we would have time to think about it
Yeah.
before the next meeting, rather than jumping in cold.
That's a good idea.
So,
I did have one more comment, though. When I looked at this memo and I read the master plan, a lot of the issues come up in 2 and 3 different sections of the master plan, like affordable housing as an example. Is there any way that we could condense that into a discussion point which covers everything in every part of the plan, or no?
Yeah, I focused on the recommendations that are in the land use section.
Right.
The land use
Yeah.
element, because they're most pertinent towards land use ordinances.
Right.
There were other recommendations in there that wouldn't necessarily end up changing the land use ordinance. So I didn't really, I thought that this should be the focus at first.
Okay, but like, as you mentioned before, parking spills over into its own section.
Oh, absolutely.
In the master
There's a whole parking and traffic element.
Right. All right.
Okay, you guys have any other comments?
Oh, wait, can we pay the bills? Please, thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Mr. Jones, seconded by Councilmember Yeager. Mayor Mullick?
Yes.
Councilmember Yeager?
Yes.
Mrs. Reed? Yes. Mr. Crowley?
Yes.
Mr. Lundholm?
Yes.
Mr. Riggs?
Yes.
Mr. Bedusis?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Bezaire? Thank you.
Final motion? Motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. All in favor? Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Oh, thank you.